So to those of you that saw my last video on COVID, you will know that Wales have gone into a firebreaker, which is just another word for lockdown, to try and curb the spread of the COVID virus that killed 3 people and hospitalised not too many more a day before they went into the firebreaker. And I've never seen so much bullshit come out of a country in such quick succession as I have for Wales over the past few days. So we may as well get into it. So first things first, for some reason, the Welsh Government decided that women do not need their sanitary products. I am literally raging and in tears. Tesco, how the hell is beer essential and period products are non-essential? Welsh Government, this is ridiculous. Hashtag Wales in lockdown, hashtag coronavirus. And for some reason they've added Piers Morgan, despite the fact that Piers Morgan has been in favour of this. And as you can see from the picture, Tesco has quite clearly put a barrier up for the aisle to get to women's sanitary products. And naturally, as I can completely understand, quite a few women, because it is women that get periods, were to say the least a little miffed about this. So Katie on Twitter decided to ask Tesco, can you explain why I was told today that I can't buy period pads as I'm sure they are essential to women, but I can buy alcohol? It doesn't make any sense. And I tend to agree with that, but if they get rid of alcohol in shops, I'm going to scream. Hi Katie, we understand how frustrating these changes will be for our Welsh customers. However, we've been told by the Welsh Government not to sell these items for the duration of the Firebreaker Lockdown. And I do love how they've actually just directly referred to it as a lockdown, despite the fact that every government around the world has been avoiding using that term again. Probably because of all the negative connotations, but you know, you can put a lot of glitter on a turd, but a turd it still is. And as Katie says, she is absolutely right. Why are we free to buy wine, spirits and beer, but women can't buy the necessary sanitary products for their time of the month? Of course, the feminists are probably going to blame all the men in Parliament for that, but I'm more just going to blame it on absolute stupidity, given that as a man, even I've thought about this. And if the sanitary products weren't bad enough, it's also illegal to buy clothes in a Welsh supermarket. This included baby clothes as well, which is just ridiculous because you need to buy babies new clothes all the bloody time. So to protest this, here was one Welsh dad's idea.
Well, Mr. Drakefold, you said clothes are non-essential. I don't think they've seen you yet.
Oh yeah, I've got to see you outside.
Clothes are not essential. I'm not filming you. Clothes are non-essential. Clothes are deemed now non-essential.
Take it up with the Welsh Government. It's nothing to do with
Your store policy states clothes are non-essential. So clothes are not essential for shopping. Clothes are not essential. Let him go buy some clothes.
I'm going to go buy some clothes then, you don't mind? No. What about the kids and the girls? I'm actually appropriately dressed. I've got my pants on, I've got shorts on. I've got my shorts on, I'm not actually indecently dressed.
This is beyond a joke. There's children that can't. There's children out there that are growing that need clothes. No, I'm just saying. So let him in.
No. Not appropriately dressed.
But clothes are non-essential. Clothes have been deemed in Wales non-essential.
We'll go and take it up with the government. It's nothing to do with
It doesn't matter.
come in here.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, cool.
So clothes are essential to day-to-day life.
Well, of course they are.
Thank you.
There you go.
So there we go, guys. Clothes. Tesco's manager has just agreed that clothes are essential to day-to-day life.
I mean, honestly, I just let that run, because there's no argument against it really, is there? If it is store policy that you need to be clothed, and yet this store will not allow you to buy clothes that they actually have in stock, and the store manager is there literally saying, okay, yeah, clothes are essential then, I mean, what argument do they have? His only reply to this was, bring it up with the Welsh Government. And don't get me wrong, I've had to deal with difficult customers before, so I do feel quite bad for the guy, because it is really nothing to do with him. It's entirely to do with the Welsh Government. But surely they realise that there's unintended consequences here, because if you're going to do a day shop, it's probably more efficient to have one trip there, buy everything you need from the one shop, because this is a supermarket. So buy your tea, buy your clothes, buy as much as you can in one place, and odds are you're going to spread the virus less because instead of going to about 5 different shops around a town, you've gone to 1. And also there's more space in the shop to actually go to. If they're closing off aisles, there is less aisles for your customers to go to, and therefore they will be less likely to spread the disease as it's less densely populated. So this policy by the Welsh Government is probably actually aiding the spread of the transmission of the virus. But the governments say that they're not, so therefore they are not. And there has been some completely understandable reactions about stopping a shop from selling its goods due to a virus that is killing on average 3 people a day. So, I mean, I think we should have a look at that.
Well, since when has clothes been exempt? Rick. It's a disgrace. Coming into winter now, look as well. All we need to do is go to the side, just take them off.
Can't do nothing, innit?
No, since when has clothes been non-essential?
And then he gets into an argument with the store manager and gets kicked out. But honestly, I can see this from 2 sides. I've worked in shops. I've had to do stupid stuff that makes absolutely no sense. Please don't actually do this. All the store is going to do is kick you out and put the stuff back up, and it's really going to annoy the workers. Having said that, I completely understand this reaction, because it is absolutely stupid to have baby clothes, or any clothes for that matter, to be put behind barriers and to have them all shrink wrapped up. Because as I said before, babies are growing all the time and need new clothes all the time. And honestly, we hear all the time about how our economy is going to get ruined because of all this coronavirus stuff. So what's the best thing to do? Oh, stop trying to let supermarkets make profits. They have unbelievably slim margins as it is. Taking away any chance they have to sell stuff isn't a good idea. And of course, this restriction isn't just on supermarkets, which probably do have a lot of savings in the account. Your average corner shop probably also has similar restrictions like this. They are going to be ruined. It's like all the governments want is a future of nothing but corporations. And I wish that was it, but the police are just getting so heavy-handed that they're even breaking up religious services.
I don't like you film people, you can get your phones out, I don't care. Obviously the coronavirus rules regulation prohibits gatherings within a public, within a private place, and more than 6 people not in the same household.
It's an unlawful regulation.
Mate, I'm not going to get into the legal argument over there. We don't want to. I'm not going to get into the legal argument. Yeah, the fact is, obviously we've had phone calls here from members of the public who are concerned that they've seen people coming here and obviously breaching these regulations.
So great, they've been snitched on. I mean, if you haven't watched it yet, go watch Internet Historian's The Virus Part 2, because he goes into all the snitching that has gone on worldwide, be it in New York, in Australia, or whatever. But when it came to the UK, it was something stupid like 200,000 calls were made in the first week to snitch on their countrymen about the coronavirus lockdown, breaking regulations, whatever. So I can completely believe that people have snitched on these people. And I personally know people who have and would still do to this day. It's almost like people have been conditioned that freedom is bad, because there's a virus, which, as the stats show, and I go through all the time, is going down, is getting no more deadly than the flu. They would just have to completely lock down the country. Economy be damned. Livelihoods be damned. Mental health be damned. And so when it comes to a congregation like this, it's not just, oh, live and let live, they might be socially distanced, okay, there's more than 6 people, whatever. No, it's none of that. It's, oh, look, people are breaking the rules. Well, I've not been breaking the rules, therefore they should be punished. Honestly, I can't see it as anything other than selfish. And honestly, if stuff like this continues, I can only see more people breaking the rules, including myself, because people are fed up with it, people can't handle it anymore, and we don't have an everlasting source of money to keep paying for the economic damage being done. We are going to be fucked.
The regulations are sitting there saying that people need to stay at home, and obviously prohibiting gatherings indoors, more than 6 people, not in the same household. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to leave, and obviously worship at home, or worship in other ways, however you obviously wish to see fit. Just give it 17 days, wait for this to blow over, and go from there. Alright?
So at least they're not getting fined or anything like that, but really, do you expect this to quote-unquote blow over in a few days? 3 people were dying a day when they decided to bring in these restrictions. Do you seriously think this is going to blow over? I mean, honestly, it's so ridiculous, and it's just like, oh, just pray at home, just worship at home. I mean, clearly either these officers have no idea how religious people function, or they simply don't care and just want to get their job done, which is, again, I can completely understand. But I mean, honestly, if you go into a job to be a police officer and you find yourself breaking up religious gatherings, that's around the time where I start thinking to myself, where did my job go so wrong?
This is really strange, and I say it respectfully. See, we love you guys as police officers. We are, and we're not law-breaking people. Please hear me. But when they say to us that it's illegal to come and worship our God, this is the West. Forgive me. This isn't the nation somewhere off in the distance, somewhere else, or somewhere else.
They're not saying it's illegal to worship God, though, are they?
But they are.
They say it's illegal for you to gather indoors when you're not the same house
They say
with
it's
6 people.
respectfully. They say it's illegal to gather as believers, and it's illegal to sing. That's what they told me.
I'm totally with this preacher. This is really strange to me. We are not allowed to freely associate with our own countrymen, to worship a God, well, to do anything really, but to do something as harmless as worship God? Really? And as I keep saying, as I keep bringing up with the stats because they're so ridiculous, 3 people dying a day, hospitalizations in the hundreds, which is really very low. Overall, people in intensive care units is around what it usually is for this time of year. Clearly, when it comes to a second peak, there's something very up. And really, we've done everything we need to do to quote-unquote flatten the curve. We are clearly not overrunning the NHS. We are clearly not going to have mass death in this country due to the coronavirus. Let people be, please, Wales. But of course, they can't do that. Wales national lockdown in the new year, likely, says Minister. A second Wales-wide lockdown in the new year is looking increasingly likely, according to a Cabinet Minister. Deputy Economy and Transport Minister Lee Waters said the current firebreak was unlikely to be the last in Wales, with England expected to follow. Great, so we can expect to not buy our babies clothes. Previously, the Welsh Government had only gone as far as saying it could not rule out another lockdown. The current national 17-day lockdown is due to be reviewed when it comes to an end on 9th of November. So when that police officer said, wait for it to blow over, apparently the ministers are saying, think again, sunshine. Speaking on the BBC Radio Wales Sunday Supplement, Mr Waters said, previous projections showed pandemics have more than one peak. Yes, but the severity of the peak, of this second peak in particular, is minuscule compared to the first. He added, this is not the last lockdown we are likely to see. The projections we published in a worst-case scenario show it's likely we're going to need another firebreak in January or February. He added that Wales is now witnessing a second peak with critical care admissions increased by 57% this week alone, and that was why the Welsh Government had introduced this short, sharp intervention. Well, for fuck's sake, I'm going to get that bloody graph up again. Here is hospitalisations. As you can see on the right side of the graph from around the start of September, yes, it looks like there is a rise when it comes to the number of people going into intensive care due to the coronavirus. As you can also see from the first peak in around March and April, we are nowhere near accelerating as much as we did back then. Here are the number of deaths. They have flatlined since the first peak, with no second peak to be cited. Given that this current lockdown is more intense than the first one that Wales brought in, i.e. you were actually allowed to buy clothes and period pads during the first lockdown, somehow I think this second one is a bit unnecessary. And the news that England is probably going to follow in this firebreak lockdown, I am scared shitless because I might not be able to go out and be a free citizen of the United Kingdom, despite the fact that the first wave was much, much, much worse. But before we get too much into that, Mark Drakeford, First Minister of Wales, had some comments on the recent Firebreaker lockdown. Let's have a listen.
No, the rule is there for a reason. The rule is there because of the emergency we face, because of the 20 deaths that we've had to announce just this one weekend. If we don't all act with a seriousness that the emergency requires.
20 deaths? Bloody hell. London's had a higher murder rate than New York for a couple of years now. You don't see any change there, but 20 deaths is an emergency? Bloody hell.
Then our health service is not going to be in a position to deal with all the demands that it has over this winter.
Your hospitalisation graph is showing otherwise, I'm afraid.
So the rule is there to help us all, to look after ourselves, to look after others, to save the NHS and to save lives.
Oh aye, lad, save our NHS. It really needs to become more widespread just how bad the NHS actually is. We spend as much public money on the health service as Germany and as Belgium in terms of DDP, yet our results are about as good as Estonia's. That's about 19th best in Europe or something like that. Saving our NHS seriously isn't worth it. There's a lot that needs to be done to reform it. And locking down an entire country is not the correct way to go about it, in my opinion.
If the rule is not being applied properly, if it's being over strictly interpreted, if some of the discretion that is there is not being used, and if there are some anomalies that we hadn't spotted on Friday but we know about on Monday, that's what we will be putting right.
Sorry we didn't realise you weren't allowed to buy your baby's clothes and you weren't allowed to buy period pads. We will be setting that right on Monday. This is how stupid the Welsh Government is being at the moment. Having said that, Tier 3 areas in England aren't faring much better. Giant pizza slices added to list of substantial meals after restaurant appeal. So, a restaurant in Manchester that was ordered to stop serving their 22-inch sliced pizza slices because they were not deemed a substantial meal is allowed to continue service after police admitted they did not have clear guidance on the rule. Thanks, Boris. Bosses at Common in Manchester city centre said police forced them to stop serving the slices which they described as fucking massive following a routine visit on Friday afternoon. Shortly after midnight on Friday, Greater Manchester was put under Tier 3 restrictions, meaning all bars and pubs which cannot serve a substantial meal alongside an alcoholic drink must close. So, yeah, this is the rules we have for Manchester. So officers turned up this week and told the staff that their pizza slices didn't fit the substantial food brief. And then later in the week, they U-turned on it saying, no, it was a substantial meal. And the main issue is that the government doesn't give precise definitions on a substantial meal. But that isn't even the worst thing to have come out this week from British news. Apparently the Independents say not wearing a mask is linked to antisocial traits study finds. Those who don't comply with COVID-19 containment measures were found to be more callous, hostile and deceitful. I'm just an evil bastard for disagreeing with the mask policy. So according to the Independent, scientists in Brazil have linked resistance to COVID-19 safety measures, such as wearing a mask, with antisocial personality traits. Their study was the first of its kind in Latin America and surveyed over 1,500 people aged 18 to 73. Using a questionnaire, the scientists sought to identify the participants' affective resonance, their impulse to act on feelings stirred by another person, and asked a series of personality questions about how well certain statements represent their behaviour. The survey also asked about compliance with COVID-19 containment measures over time, such as wearing masks. And the article doesn't tell you much more than just they found a link between the two. How strong the correlation is, whether it's just a correlation or whether there's any causation between the two, is not explained. But the Independent take a very surface level stance and basically look like they're trying to imply that if you see someone or know someone who is against mask wearing, they're probably an antisocial and therefore bad person. Well, on the bright side, at least none of this has been the worst thing I've seen to do with COVID this week. Let's go over to New Zealand and see what they have planned for their restrictions.
As part of our overall national response to this new outbreak, I am now directing medical officers of health that all cases, confirmed cases, are to be managed in a quarantine facility.
Right, so anyone with any positive case, whether it be a false positive or whether it be a symptomless positive, will go to a quarantine zone.
Now, this is different to how positive cases were managed when we were last at levels 4 and indeed 3, and shows how serious we are about limiting any risk of ongoing transmission, even in self-isolation and including to others in the household.
So self-isolating in your house and managing your own quarantine, no longer good enough for the New Zealand government.
This will apply to any cases and also close family members who might be at risk as appropriate. A reminder, these facilities have been set up specifically and have excellent processes and resources in place to look after people with COVID-19, including health staff on site at all times.
So why the need for the changes? We hear this all the time. Oh, everything's going really well. And then, as you see in Wales, it's like, oh, but you're not allowed to buy clothes anymore. I don't get it. Why do they keep changing their tune every 2 days? Or 2 seconds in this case. But then the video goes to what the Prime Minister of New Zealand has to say about this.
If someone refuses in our facilities to be tested, they have to keep staying. So they won't be able to leave after 14 days. They have to stay on for another 14 days. So it's a pretty good incentive. You either get your tests done and make sure you're cleared, or we will keep you in a facility.
Bloody hell. You will be held against your will by the government until the government decides that you have passed the test, you are no longer infected, and then you will be free to be a citizen again. I don't understand why you would vote in someone, and she just won a landslide victory, by the way, why you would vote in someone saying this. This is how ridiculous and mollycoddled the general public has become all over the Western world. I don't know, we seem to need to remind the public what it means to be a free country, because being kept in a quarantine zone for 14 days, and then if you don't have a test you need to wait another 14 days minimum, that doesn't sound very free to me.
Longer, so I think most people will look at that and say, I'll take the test.
Oh, we've got too many citizens thinking that they've got civil liberties to leave our quarantine zone. No, we can't have that. You got to realise we can't have that. Citizens being free, bloody hell, who would ever have thought of that? This is New Zealand, don't you know? But yes, New Zealand has been constantly regarded as one of the best countries to have handled the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's not because that they have more sheep than people. It's not because it is not a major trading hub like the US or the UK. No, it's all got to be down to how the government deals with it. Because for some reason, all over the world at the moment, it seems to be the only thing you can blame anything on is the government, and the only thing you can praise for something going well is the government. Whereas I think the general public really have their own responsibility and have their own part to play in all this, but for some reason most people don't. And I'm glad to know that there are states and counties in America that have basically done a Sweden, and even Sweden itself, and just let the virus go a bit mad and not restricted the public to the point where they can't buy clothes, and well, they don't even go anywhere near that far. Some counties don't even have mask mandates. But the general public do their part to stop the spread of the virus, and lo and behold, it actually works out quite well. But for some reason Wales, which is another country with more sheep than people, saw the need to stop people buying clothes and to stop women buying their sanitary products. But what do I know? I'm not in charge of a country. I just believe people aren't idiots and will be responsible for their own actions. But, well, obviously not a lot of people agree with that nowadays, which is very depressing. But, well, before I go on a rant, I may as well say that's everything I've got for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.